What's up, everybody? Welcome back. I'm here today with my friend Reza Dorrani, BizApps MVP. How you doing, sir?
Hello, John. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I understand you're on a double header today. Did a webinar this morning and now joining me to do a video. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Enjoyed the webinar in the morning and now more excited for this one.
Awesome. And so today, Reza is going to do something that has been long asked for, that I get requested all the time, and I am not really able to do because I'm not good at them myself. And so Reza's here to show us expressions 101. I'm excited for that, sir. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead, let you introduce yourself fully and take the show away.
Absolutely. So hello, everyone. I'm Reza Dorrani. I'm a Microsoft Business Applications MVP. I'm also a principal consultant and I work at an organization called Catapult Systems in Houston, Texas. I will go ahead and get started with today's session.
We're trying out backgrounds today. You notice we got Minecraft backgrounds. Pretty fun, change it up a little bit.
So let's begin with today's session on Flow Expressions 101.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So let's begin with what are expressions first. And just like John mentioned that expressions is something that gets frequently asked about. I am a Power Automate community super user, and as part of the community, I'm very active on the forums. One of the most common questions that we get in these community forums is purely around expressions, because expressions is a language that you need to learn, you need to understand, and the more you play with expressions, the more familiar you will get with expressions. So let's get started with what are expressions first. Expressions in Flow are a set of functions that can be used to perform any specific action you require within your flow. Some very common examples are listed right here. String manipulations, working with dates, converting data types, performing logical operations, mathematical calculations, and so on and so forth. So the moment you run into specific scenarios wherein the existing actions do not suffice, you have to start thinking about expressions.
So Reza, in plain English, I'm going to help out on a couple of these things. So manipulate strings. What's that mean? That means change text. A string, that's just text. And then working with dates, obviously that's like dates on a calendar. Converting data types. Maybe we want to take a string value and convert it into a number type, which is an integer, right? And then logical functions as well. That allows us to change the data, to manipulate it in some way, to cut it up in some way, to make a decision. And so just in plain English, that's what a couple of those things mean.
Absolutely. All right, now that we've looked at what are expressions, now let's look at the anatomy of an expression. Now in this example that I've given right here, I have a very simple expression and I'm using a function in Flow that is called replace. And replace as a function expects, so this is my function called replace. Replace expects 3 parameters. Okay, that's the behavior of the replace function. The first parameter is the text, your original text, your string. The second parameter is the text that you want to search for in your original string. And the third parameter is the text that you want to replace the old text with. So if I need to write a very simple expression like this, if you look on the left-hand side in the screenshot of the expression dialog, we are leveraging the replace function. I have a text and the text says the old world. Now I'm replacing the word old by the word new. And if I was to run the flow and when this expression would be evaluated, the output would equate to the new world, basically replacing the word old with the word new, because that's how I have gone ahead and framed an expression.
Got it.
This is a very simple example, but the goal here is to understand the anatomy of an expression. An expression basically will have a function and it can have one or more attributes associated with it. Those are your parameters. And that would depend upon the type of function that you call within flow. Now that we've broken down an expression and we've understood what comprises of an expression, let's look at the different types of expressions that are available in flow. So the first type of expressions are the basic expressions, which are basically expressions that constitute of one function with one or more parameters. And we have already looked at this in the previous example. The same replace function is right here. And why is this a basic function? Because I'm just leveraging one function here called replace, and I'm just replacing my text. We have another function known as concat, which is basically the concatenation operation. It is used to stitch strings together. And I am concatenating the words today is with UTC now, which actually is also a function which prints out the current date and time in UTC format. So both these examples are examples of expressions that are basic in usage. The next type of expressions is advanced expressions. And advanced expressions basically involve more than one functions that are plugged together for a peculiar use case scenario. Now, if you look at the examples that I've provided right here, I am leveraging the same string concatenation function again. I am concatenating the text today is. This time, instead of directly utilizing UTC now, which gives me the current date and time in UTC format, I am actually going ahead and formatting that as well by leveraging another function. This function is called format date time, and it expects two attributes. The first attribute of type date, and I'm providing UTC now. And the second attribute is the format that you want to leverage for this date field. And I'm leveraging the month, day, and year format, right? So in this example, again, if you look at the anatomy of an expression, this is a function. It expects two parameters. The parameters are strongly typed. So if it expects date, you have to provide date. That's how expressions work. If the parameter expects string, you have to provide a string variable attribute to it. So this is an example of, these are some examples of advanced expressions.
Cool. This is great.
Now that we've looked at the different types of expressions, let's figure out where can we actually go ahead and plug these expressions in our flows. So there are three places where you can use expressions, which basically means you can use them everywhere in flow. The first one is actions. Expressions can be used in any flow action. So in this example right here, as you can see, I have an action that gets items from a SharePoint list. And I have provided a query in my action which says, get me all the items in my list where the activity date, which is a date column in SharePoint, is greater than or equal to a peculiar expression that I have plugged in. And this expression looks like this. Once again, there's a function. The function is add days, which means add days to a particular date. The date that I have provided is UTC now, which is the current date and time. And I am subtracting 7 days from the date. And the reason why I'm subtracting 7 days is because there is no function known as subtract days. There is only a function known as add days, and the same function you can leverage for both use cases. And the documentation around these expressions will help you and guide you to understand all the various use cases around the different functions that are available.
Yeah, that tripped me up at first, like the add days doing minus in add days. I was like, wait a second, where's the remove days?
Okay, so we can use expressions in actions. We can also use them in conditions, right? So whenever you have a condition statement in your flow, you can plug your expressions in there as well. So for example, I want to check to see that the length of the response that I get from a previous action and flow is greater than 1 or not. So I can check a condition like that. And the third option is trigger conditions. Now expressions and flows.
Hold on, wait. Reza, we did a video about this.
Yes, we did.
So we don't have to spend too much time here. If you guys want to learn about trigger conditions, go check the description. There's a link to that video that you'll learn all about it.
All right, that makes it really easy. Go and check out our video.
Yep.
And finally, before we head over to the demos, another important thing to understand is that the expression editor in Flow has two flavors as of today. Flavor one is the classic expression editor, which is highlighted right here on the top. And in the classic expression editor, there are certain things that you need to be aware of. Number one, this editor is currently generally available. So this should be used in your production scenarios. Second, the expression window or the expression dialog has very limited space. So as you can see, I'm highlighting this right here with my marker.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you want to plug in data from previous actions of your flow, leveraging something known as dynamic content in your expressions, what you would have to do is right at the top, there's this tab experience. So you have to click on dynamic content. It switches over to dynamic content. You can pick your values and then head over back to the expression to make a change to the expression. So you
Yep.
have to be aware of the fact that you are in the respective tab, either dynamic content or the expression.
Yep.
And one thing that I do not like about this is my fourth point, which is every time you make an update to the expression in the old expression editor, you have to click on the OK button or the update button. If you click out of the expression editor, you will lose the expression that you plugged in into the dialog.
Yes. The old editor has many pain points. It's a lot more reliable than it once was, but
True.
it is still not as cool as the new experimental version.
And that's our next part, which is the modern expression editor. I'm calling it the modern editor. This is now
Okay.
available as an experimental feature. I will show in the demo how you turn this feature on, but you need to be aware that this is experimental. And when you turn this on, you turn on every other experimental feature that's available in Power Automate.
There's
So,
only a couple, and they're all pretty good, so it's not a bad thing.
right.
But just to be aware.
Also, in this expression editor, the first big takeaway is the expression space is large. So as you can see in the previous classic editor, we just had a very small box to plug in expressions. And when your expressions used to get long, it was very difficult to evaluate the entire expression in one view. Now with this new box that's made available to us, you can plug in really long, complex expressions. The other advantage of the new expression editor is the dynamic content is also available within the expression dialog itself. So you don't have to switch between tabs while jumping back and forth between dynamic content and expressions. And the biggest takeaway for me is if you click out of this expression dialog, it will save your expression. So you won't lose the expression that you plugged in. There is no need for you to click on any button in order for you to save your expression.
That's pretty nice. That is a good change. I didn't actually realize that. I didn't think about that part of it. That's pretty nice.
And now we head over to our demos.
Oh, it's demo time. I feel like I need a sound. I gotta hit like a soundboard. Bum bum bum. Demo time.
All right, so we are now in Flow. And within Flow, I have already pre-created a few flows for this demo purpose. In the first demo, we are just going to cover the expression editor because I want to compare the two editors in motion. So let's go ahead and edit this flow. Now in this scenario, I have a very basic flow that gets triggered manually. So this is a button flow. And in this flow, I have a very simple compose action. What is a compose action? A compose action is an arbitrary object that gets created in Flow and you can leverage it throughout your flow.
Yep.
In this scenario, I am just leveraging it to create expressions to demo expressions.
Right on. Yeah, it's an empty box. You just fill the empty box.
It's just an empty box. And
Yep.
let's go ahead and actually create this empty box. So I will go ahead and search for compose. And all I get is this empty box that I can plug in hard-coded data or plug in expressions. Now in this scenario, I am in the old school classic expression editor. And right here, as you notice, the moment I click on on a property within an action, it opens this dialog on the right hand side. Now within this dialog, I have dynamic content wherein I can dynamically pick attributes prior to this step in my flow. And then I can switch over to the expression dialog wherein I can start plugging in my expressions, right? So for example, if I want to plug in the replace expression, I type in replace and I start plugging in my function right here.
Yep.
As you can see, the dialog has very less space and I have to click on the OK button. So if I start typing my expression and if I just click out, I lose my expression. Okay, so next we are going to look at the modern expression editor. And in this scenario, I will go ahead and once again create that same compose action, which gives me a blank input where I can plug in my expressions. The moment I click here, you will notice a difference. I did not get that dialog feature that opened up in the classic experience, which had dynamic content and which had the expression dialog.
Yeah.
Rather, I get a new experience right here known as function, which is the expression editor. And if you click on this, this will now open the new expression editor experience. The advantage is here. Number one, you see the expression dialog is large for you to plug in extremely complex expressions. Number two, my dynamic actions are right here within the expression syntax itself. So if I pick this, it will just plug in my expression without me having to even understand how the expression syntax works.
Nice.
That's for dynamic content. Another small thing, but I really like this feature here as well. You see this option right here, it says list of functions. This basically lists out, and if I click on this, this takes me to the reference documentation and it lists out every function that is available for you to use as part of flow expressions.
Awesome.
So if you're
I was
dealing with strings, just
Yeah,
go to the string
I was
expression.
thinking we needed to link this anyways, so
Yeah.
this is perfect.
This is perfect, right? The modern experience has this nice little option that I observed, which says list of functions.
Love it.
So do check that out if you want to go ahead and start learning about the various functions that are available as part of expressions. Now, let's go back to the expression editor and now let's go ahead and plug a very simple function in this expression dialog.
Okay.
Before we go there, how do I get this expression dialog? How do I get this modern expression dialog? Just go to settings, view all Power Automate settings, and make sure that the experimental features is turned on. Please note this is on a per user basis. So me turning this on does not turn it on for my colleague. This is on a per user basis.
Yep.
All right. Heading back to my dialog for expressions. This time we are going to use the replace function. Now what I want everyone to understand is you do not have to learn all the functions by heart. What you need to be aware of is that there are functions that are available and here is the entire list. And the beauty of the functions is they are categorized and the article clearly categorizes all the functions. So if
Nice.
you're dealing with strings, right now I'm dealing with strings. I just want to replace a character of my string with a different character. Click on string functions. This will list out all the functions that are available. You do not have to get confused whatsoever. I am looking to replace strings. There's a function right here called replace. If you click on this, this will take you and show you examples as well as to how you can go ahead and leverage this function with documentation, clear documentation given out right here,
Great.
including the parameters, including the data types of the parameters, including what these parameters do. Heading back to the flow,
Yeah. Super useful.
very useful. Heading back to the flow, now as I start typing my function, notice how IntelliSense is going ahead and actually representing all the different functions that are available as part of that text that I'm entering. So it clearly says there is a function called replace. So I can just pick this and I can open my function. Now notice it clearly says that this function requires three parameters right here, text, the old text, and the new text. Now, if I click out, right, it has gone ahead and placed that function right there. So I did not lose the work that I did. That's the beauty of this modern editor as well.
That is nice.
If I click back here, I can go ahead and start plugging my expression. So let's say my expression says the old world, right? That's my original text.
Yep.
Now, once I plug in my next parameter, once again, look at how the IntelliSense is guiding me through. I am not coding anything. I am not going ahead. I don't have to buy hard anything. The experience itself is self-explanatory. Now it is asking me for text, which is of type string, right? So I'm going to go ahead and type my text, which is old, and type my text, which is new. And that's how my expression looks like. Now, let's say while typing, you made a mistake. Everybody is human. Everybody can make a mistake. So let's say I made a mistake and I forgot to close the bracket at the end. Now, if I click out, the beauty of this expression editor is it clearly tells me that there's an error. There is something that is not right with this function that I have just plugged in. So I've got to go back here. I got to go back there and I have to go and make the fix. Currently, the expression experience is not too intuitive to tell you exactly where the error is, but it will tell you if there is an error in your expression or not. So the best way to go around it, once again, is to read the documentation. It will clearly guide you as to how many parameters, what are the type of parameters, how is the syntax of this expression supposed to be. So make sure you get all of that right. So once I plug in my correct expression, as you can see, it clearly highlights here in blue that this function is correct. This expression is ready to use. And now if I go ahead and if I run this flow, so this flow has executed successfully. If we look at this action, you will look at the output right here, which is the new world. And how did the new world come across? That's because I used the replace action to replace the word old with the word new in a very, very simple expression to change my text in this string. Now, if we look at some other examples right here, this is the same example of replacing the text. I have another function right here, which is again an expression. This time I am concatenating the string today is with a date UTC now, right? And if you observe the function again as I'm typing my function, so let's go ahead and try and plug this entire thing again. So if I type concatenate and if I open the function, once again, if you go to the list of functions right here, and if you go to string functions, there is a function right here called concatenate. So you can see what these functions do for you and then go ahead and accordingly plug in your expressions. And once you plug in your expression and once you run the flow, so I'm going to go ahead and run this flow. And this is a very simple function or expression that I've plugged in, which says concatenates the words today is with the current date and time in UTC format. And that's exactly what this expression has done.
Nice.
Right?
Easy. Yeah.
Easy peasy. Easy. But there's a problem with this specifically in working with dates, right?
Yeah, nobody actually tells time like that.
Nobody. Would you like an email that goes out that tells you your task is due at this date and this time?
Yeah, try and figure out what the T's and the Z's mean in your time code, eh?
Right. So the important thing to understand is that Flow understands dates only in UTC format, no matter how your system of record stores it. So when I plug in data from SharePoint, it will represent the date and time to me in UTC format. If I'm getting it from SQL, same scenario.
Yep.
Flow understands dates and times in UTC format, but when you are sending email notifications, when you are sending task due reminders, you would like your dates to be formatted, right?
Yeah, totally.
Now let's look at a scenario like that and let's see how expressions can help us achieve that.
Okay.
So I have another flow in this case. And in this scenario, I have 3 different expressions written because I want to prove how the different functions guide us through the process of creating an actual date and time in a format that is readable by my users, plus that is in the time zone that I desire it to be in.
Okay.
Right? So the first expression is the same as before. I'm just concatenating a string with UTC now. So this will put out the date and time in UTC format. The second expression, once again, concatenates today is, which is a standard string. But this time, instead of directly leveraging UTC format, I am using another function known as format date time. Now, where did this function come about? Go back to the reference guide again, right? Go to date and time functions. And you have these loads of date and time functions that you can play with, right? There are so many options that you can play with. There are string functions that you can play with. There are many functions available that you need to learn. And one of them is known as format date time. And all it expects me to give is the date and time and the format that I want to specify it in. And this format is also given in the documentation. So I've gone ahead and plugged in my format. Now, although this will work and format my date and time in a more readable format than the previous experience, it will still showcase the data or the date in UTC now time.
Right.
If I want to convert it into the time zone of the user, I need to use another function. And these are classic examples of advanced functions, wherein more than one functions are leveraged in one expression to come across a desired output. Like in my scenario, my simple output is get me the date in Pacific time in a peculiar format.
Yep.
And this is how the expression looks like.
Yep.
And I'm
And
going
so and all this is doing is kind of saving you time and steps. There is flow steps actions that will allow you to convert time and move those outputs. But what Reza is showing here is how you can very quickly just take two of these actions and snap them together and
to
avoid having extra steps in your flow. And it actually makes it a little more lightweight if you can do it this way.
absolutely. And in this scenario, all I have done is I've used another function. Once again, the expressions guide, the link right here, list of functions will provide that to you. There's a function known as convert from UTC. All you need to do is provide the date and time in UTC format, which is the basic format that Flow understands, and then plug in your specific time zone right here, and you're good to go.
Nice.
Now, if I go
Reza,
ahead and run
so
this flow,
so nice of you converting to my time zone.
this is my time zone as well right now.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting that. That's right.
So let's look at the outputs of all the three actions, right?
Okay.
The first action gives me, and I'm going to try and zoom in further. So the first action gives me today's date in UTC now format. Nobody would like to read this for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
The next thing gives me the date and time in a more readable format, which says Friday, May 15th, 2020, 7:49 p.m.
Not
But
bad.
this is giving me the date in UTC time. This is not my specific time zone. Right now I'm in Pacific time. It's not giving me the accurate time zone.
Yep.
And when I use the third function, this time it was able to give me the formatted date, and also it was able to convert it into the time zone that I specified in that one expression.
Yep. See, and now we're giving away secrets. Everyone knows that we recorded this video a couple weeks earlier.
So the thing about expressions now, as John mentioned, right, there are actions available in Flow where you can read data, you can start, adding or converting dates, or you can convert it from one time zone to another or format your dates. Yes, there are actions available, and yes, the Flow team will keep adding new actions to make things easier. But if you use the expression syntax, you save on the steps in your flow. Your
Yep.
flows look a lot cleaner. That's number one. And number two, once you learn this expression language, any scenario is possible. And in future videos, when we'll go to flows 201 and 301, which I'm hoping we get to there, Mr. John, when we get there, I am really hoping that when we talk about more complex scenarios, you will realize how important expressions are to avoid loops, to avoid multiple steps to get to the same desired output.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely super valuable to know. I think there are the steps like Reza said, the flow team will continue to make those, but just understanding this not only allows you to save steps, but also it's going to give you some extra tools in your repertoire, because what you're going to find is oftentimes things aren't going to line up. You're going to need to turn one data type into another data type, or you're going to need to convert something two different ways to get it where you need it, or you're going to have to do checks against date and time, which really require a lot of things which really require a lot of the skills you learn from understanding all of these expressions. Yeah, cool, man, awesome. So I
Thank you.
think that's it for our 101, right? We're going to
Yep.
stop here, and we're going to save the rest of the goodness for a 201.
Absolutely. With a little bit of homework for our viewers, I would like you guys to go ahead and try out the new expression editor. Try it out, give it a shot. Try out a
Yes.
few basic functions, the ones that I just demoed. Maybe just try these out and let us know in comments how was your experience in working with expressions and flow.
Love it. That's great. Perfect. I like it. Giving out homework, voluntold, as Donna would say, right? Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, well, you guys know what to do. Check the description. We got a lot of info for Reza down there. He's got a YouTube channel, he's got Twitter, he's doing cool stuff all the time. Go check out the trigger conditions video as well. That's going to teach you how to save flow runs. And look out in a couple weeks. Hopefully, we'll have an Expressions 201 video coming at you. Reza, thanks so much for joining me, man. Really appreciate you being here as always.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me once again on your show.
Awesome. All right, guys. Much love from me. Click that like button, click that subscribe, hit the bell so that you get notified, and we'll see you in the next one.